Green with the ball. Out to Riley Higgins. Passes out to Lassie. Filippo cuts around two, looks for the offload. And he's been brought down 10 away from Tawa's try line. 7 in. Larkai takes the ball into contact. Henry out to Filippo again. Henry finds TJ Clark. Out to Stanley Solomon. Looks, goes and scores for Batoni. Stanley Solomon. This is only his 4th try in the colours for Batoni. Intercepted by Stanley Solomon. Lua tries to chase after him. Lost the polo, but Stanley Solomon has got to sail under the post. He's got to score his 2nd try for the match. And the score now is 25 points to 10. And that was great vision there from the young man. Certainly backline, Khan Green. Out to Malolo. Comes out to Lossie Filippo. He's got Stanley Solomon again. Can he go and score a hat-trick? He's got 3 tries. Stanley Solomon has got 3 tries. Fantastic vision by Lossie Filippo. In his 36th game for Batoni. And he saw the young speedster to his right-hand side. And with plenty of pace, Stanley Solomon goes over and scored his 3rd try for the Villagers.
That was masterclass, Brad. Some fantastic play from the base of the scrum. Once again, we've been mentioning that pass, the mucker from Logan Henry.
Ball's been turned over. Here goes Stanley Solomon again. He's read. That could be 4 tries. They're chasing back after him. He's got to get 4 tries. This is magic here at Lyndhurst Park. He followed up the kick. He managed to bounce off 2 tacklers. And Stanley Solomon, write yourself into the history books. That's 4 tries. Lee Campbell, stunning.
Outstanding play, Brad. Outstanding.
Welcome to the 80th episode of the Huddy Hui, and we're trying something new tonight. We've got a few new graphics on display, so hopefully you could see all that working. And of course, it's an interesting club rugby so far this year. Who would have thought the results so far? And our guest tonight is someone who's in the thick of rugby, particularly with the Marist St Pat's club. And our guest tonight is Luke Donaldson. And Luke, hopefully you can hear me, and I think you can see both of us on the screen now. How are you doing?
I can hear you loud and clear, Brad. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It looks like we've just got a bit of a... Can't hear Luke at the moment. We'll just wait and see if we can get his audio going. It seems we've just lost them there for a sec, so we'll just come back to the main screen there. But anyway, Luke Donaldson is our guest on the Hui tonight. Of course, Luke has played for Marist St Pat for a number of games. Of course, he's also played over in down in Otago as well. So just while Luke gets his audio sorted, we'll just put you on a bit of an ad break for a bit.
Are you there, Brad? Try again. You there, mate? I got my mic and my video there. I think it cut out on your one last time. I don't know how that worked. Can you still hear me now then, or is it not there? Cool. And camera's working okay too? Let's see you this time.
Well, kia ora, and hopefully we've got him now. So let's just change our screen over, and hopefully Luke is there now. Luke, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brad, this time, hopefully. Can you not hear me?
Just doesn't seem I can get you still, Lee. It might be a little gremlin in the system. Just let me just see what's going on here. Technology, it's always fun, isn't it? Just in the meantime.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Are we there? So that's weird. Can you hear me now that thing stopped? Can you hear me now, Brad, or no? Are you able to hear me now or not so much?
Okay, look, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, Brad, I'll just keep talking. I remember when you used to referee my games as a kid. I'll just keep going into your message saying that you can hear me. Don't know what the issue was going on through there, but I quite enjoy having a bit of fun. But yeah, it's a bit weird. Oh, the issues of live internet always reaps its ugly head.
Test 1, 2.
Can you hear me, Brad?
Ah, that's better. Good.
Oh, I love a win. There we go.
Love a win. There we go. Apologies for the delay. We'll start again. Welcome to the 80th episode of the Huddy Hui. Our guest tonight is Luke Donaldson, who's been patiently putting up with terrible technology. But Luke, we finally got there, didn't we?
We got there, mate. We got there. Perseverance is key.
Oh, exactly. That's all right to say. Well, of course, Luke, you're product of St Pat's Town. We'll get to that story soon. But let's talk about Marist St Pat, 7th on the table, 3 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. How has the season been to date?
Not honestly, I actually quite like the team we got this year. It seems to be our ongoing issue is that we're such we're a slow starter, or we're too keen. We seem to get penalised quite a lot at the start of the game, and it just sort of lets in an early couple of points, and we're just sort of playing catch up from there.
But of course, a lot of injuries so far, especially Keelan Whitman. It appears he might be out for the season.
Yeah, sadly. I guess it's just how the game goes, and it really shows. Still got boys that are fronting up, but it is quite frustrating when stars like Keelan, who is going to be out for the season, he said, or he'd be back for the semi-finals. Yeah, when we make it. Positive thinking.
Positive thinking.
Positive thinking. But no, it's the the boys that are stepping up. They are young, they're new, and so they're just sort of getting their grips about how to work amongst the team. After yesterday's training, definitely a lot more confident going into this weekend. So I think we now that combinations are starting to get there, we'll be a lot better.
Now, you haven't played for the Premier side since that game against Johnsonville, which was a draw. Why is that?
Why is that? Well, as you may or may not know, so I work as an emergency doctor, and so I do a lot of shift work. So I'm working at the Wellington emergency, which involves sort of working 1 and 2 weekends. And as rightly so, when I'm not working those or I'm working during the week, I don't expect to come on and just start playing for the Premier team if I can't make the trainings. And so Logan Love's come back in as the class halfback he is, and so it's sort of me and Ken Capelli fighting for that secondary spot at the moment. And it's really just the one that trains well during the week and actually fronts up, gets the shot. And so 1 week I'm working, the other week I don't show up, and so he just gets the fill in.
No, it's often the case in this day and age. Of course, you mentioned the Johnsonville game. You had to tell the referee the ball was grounded to make sure you got over the line to escape a narrow loss against the Hawks.
Well, you know me, Brad, and you've reffed me a couple of times through the last 13 years I've known you too. I do have a bit of a mouth. I do like to make sure that everyone hears me on the field, whether it's right or wrong. I thought that just that one occasion, because it was so tense, I thought I'd just help it out just a little bit, make sure there was no confusion. And thankfully, the photographer got the exact same time, which is now immortalised, isn't it? Which is great.
Now, of course, there's been a bit of change with the coaching setup at the club this year for the Premier side. Tell us who's running the reins at Marist St Pat's this year.
As for most club rugby in Wellington, people know we've got Whakatonu Feli as our head coach this year, who sort of stepped up the reins from the back coach last year, and anyone that sort of played with, against, or under him has learned that he is an absolute man of innovation. So just trying to redevelop, I guess, the game plan and structure. He's nothing but encouraging, especially for the likes of the new boys that are coming through, have nothing but positive things for him. They're helped out by Loa Lokatui and Venus. I have to apologise, I don't remember his name, as well as Tawisi. Just a lot of strong Marist boys that are all included in that. But I'm really, actually, I am really enjoying this coaching group this year. Nice and structured, nice and clear, and it always feels good when you're able to approach and talk to coaches and ask them about work ons, as opposed to just sort of, having to guess yourself. And I think that's the nice change that's come this year.
Is Whakatonu Feli going to take the field this year? Because he always retires.
He does. He does always retire. There was one stage at the start of the year when I think Wellesley was out and a couple of the other boys had gone down, and you could see Ton's chomping at the bit. But I think this year he really has reined in he's pulled it in a little bit, where he's given the young boys a bit of a shot, because obviously he can't keep playing forever. And so this year he's given, he tried to give Jack O'Brien a bit of a go before Wellesley tore his calf, and now we've got Zach Patterson in there at first 5 as well. I think it's quite good. Honestly, I don't think he will, unless we get one more first 5 down, because we've got 6 in our ranks, and just because we're hopefully he is only the 7th man that's needed.
Just remember, the All Blacks in 2011 went through a whole lot of first 5s. You might be called up eventually.
Well, if he does get pulled up, even I got pulled up. I was a first 5 back in the day as well. I wouldn't say no.
So, as well as you mentioned the name Jack O'Brien, he scored 32 points against Norths in round 3. He's a real talent coming through the system. Who else has the club got in terms of young talent this year?
Who's our club? So we've got quite a lot of good new talent that's come through St Pat's this year, which is quite nice. As as well as Jack O'Brien, who's an absolute star, especially in his debut, and he's slotted in perfectly. Got a lot of new boys that have just starting to get their sort of shots. Like I said, Zach Patterson, who sort of came through Hamilton Boys, but also Francis Metric, who you'll know as a classic St Pat's man, very strong family name at St Pat's Town, and was all over the Sky Sports last year, has come in and made his same debut on that week. Absolutely tore up. A couple of other boys that have come in, especially in the forwards, which have been quite nice. Sinasco, Crichton, jumped the ship after coming up from Otago. Jumped the ship from Norths and left his brother, which is always quite nice to, come play with the boys that he grew up with. But also Makairi Wiki, who came down from, he came down from Auckland, who's our number sort of 6-7, who's actually, it's also, to boost the ranks, especially in our very fragile loose forward trio.
Your debut for Marist St Pat's was in 2016. You've played 27 games. What's your best game for Marist St Pat's to date?
Ooh, that's a good question, actually. Oh man, no, I probably say the best game that I've enjoyed being there has been the Auries game out at Polo Ground. Would have been two years ago. Ken ended up getting injured in the warm up, and so I ended up having to play 80 minutes, which is no fun for any kind of halfback, especially when our game plan is going side to side. And it's quite tough on the ticker, but it's never easy, as all the results against Auries you can see this year go. You never beat Auries at Polo Ground unless you've got a really tight-knit team, and that was the one game that was absolute good heart, especially against, I was playing against a couple of the Paisi brothers and Declan Hay, of which I sort of grew up through the halfback ranks, all fighting for St Pat's Town positions. So it's always nice to play against sort of old St Pat's Town boys on different sides of the footy ball. But I think we ended up getting away a good 20-point win, if I remember rightly, on the Polo Ground, which is absolutely no feat. But I think I was just more impressed with myself in that game because I'm not someone that normally lasts 80 minutes unless I'm told to. And Tons was just sort of looking at me going, hurry up, come on, keep going, stop mucking around, stop walking. And it's always when you get the big boss man given the strong word from the sideline, you sort of tend to find a fifth or sixth gear. So that's the one that definitely sticks out for me.
St Pat's Town was the school where you did your secondary school and also played your secondary school rugby. Tell us about that 2010 team, during which was a special side in the 125th year of the college. And there's a number of those players that have gone on to higher honours. Tell us about that year.
Oh, it was a great year. I was lucky enough to make that year as a sixth former, and we were absolutely stacked. As you know, we had the likes of NPC players now, so Eric Sionne, who ended up going over to France, Donald Brickhouse, who I think still playing for Taranaki, Matt Proctor, who ended up playing strong man in the Māori All Blacks, the Hurricanes, and now is over. I think he's just finished his 10-year up over in England. It was a nice sort of combination build that sort of you could see from fifth form that absolutely peaked at that point. I was lucky enough to sort of be sort of thereabouts in that team. Jack Talapapa was the starting halfback, and so as Jared Tully, who was the backs coach at that point, he goes, Luke, you're not good enough to be there at the halfback, but we'll have to find a spot for you because you're just crazy. So they ended up slotting me on the wing. Don't know how that ended up happening because as most of Marist will testify, I'm definitely not the fastest or the nimblest player on the field. And I think they finally got there and they slotted me into first five, sort of working inside and outside some absolute champion people. And I can't forget, obviously, the boy that I grew up with, Tausasi Tomavave, who was down at fullback, who I sort of grew up from fifth year all the way through, and he was, I think he was the top point scorer that season. We made it all the way through the final, and I think it was the first, so we played Silverstream. We lost to your college, Brad. That's okay. We're used to it. But we beat you in the traditional up at Wellington X-Men's Park, which I think was the first time in 10, 12 years that we'd actually done the feat. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Grand Slam that year. We lost to Wellington College right at the start, and we we're undefeated from that game all the way through. Day-night games, I think it just sort of changed everyone's mindset. I think we already had 1 foot over the finish line in our heads. People were already planning about going and tackling on Napier or Hastings boys, I think it was. I think just not being fully in that game that day, just obviously, as you know, I think we lost by about 5 or 7 points with a couple of, just the boys that fronted up and obviously wanted to beat us after a very tight-knit game in that traditional. I think it was the last time we played them.
2011, you were made skipper of the side. How important was that for you?
Oh, I don't know if important's the word. I think I was very honoured, sort of being sort of in that mindset all the way through. I'm, as you know, I'm someone that wears my heart on the sleeve for whatever team I play for. So that time it was the St Pat's first 15, and I was very much there to try and help lead. Obviously, we'd lost a lot of boys in 2010 group. I think we ended up losing about 15 out of the 22 players. And so it was just sort of me, Tolsosi, who was out with injuries all the way through the year. And then there was only a couple other boys that were sort of fringe players. So I feel like I probably got it as we've got no one else. But regardless of the fact, I definitely took it on, had a bit of fun with it. We didn't get all the results we wanted. I think we got pipped in the semi-finals. But it was definitely a hell of an experience, sort of rubbing shoulders, especially with a couple of the other captains that were playing in that year, the likes of Andrew Wells and Adi Savia for Rongotai at that same time. It was quite cool.
After the 2011 season, you went on an exchange program to France, northern France to Yaris. How did this come about?
So back in under 15s, I was coached by Damien Rapida Davies, or Raps as everyone knows in the Wellington community. He had, I don't know how he got his finger in, but he has his finger in many pots, as everyone knows. And somehow he had a connection with the Arras rugby team. He sort of goes over there. I think we had a couple of their players come over here. And a couple of years prior, they started running an exchange where we get a couple of players of our sort of senior group that would go over. So the likes of, I think, Corey Lawrence, and the year before me was Nick Harrison. They all went over, and it was just a nice, I didn't realise the amount of history that Wellington had with Arras Tunnel with the whole World War One, and so they very much wanted Kiwi players to come over, have a bit of fun. So I pretty much hit up Raps because they'd already linked up with Erasmus Shomkul because he was already taking French at the time, and I took no French. I didn't really have any interest in extra languages because I was already struggling enough with English. Hit him up and said, "Hey, I wouldn't mind going. What needs to be done? How can I make this work?" And that was sort of right at the start of the season. And he essentially said, "Look, start taking French lessons. Prove to me with the receipts that you're actually doing it. We'll get you on that plane." And within a couple of months, Mum and Dad had secured me some French lessons. It took over a lot of my study, and thank God, because I didn't do very well in NCA that year, and I'm very happy that I got to repeat it. Because the French and rugby took the precedent for that, because that was my goal that year. So I was very lucky to thank you to Raps very much to get me over there.
And how was the footy over there, particularly? How is it different to New Zealand rugby?
Oh, it's very different. So it was sort of like how everyone sort of goes when they go over to a different country, or people that do know that feeling. They train sort of 4 or 5 days a week. The style of footy is very much Northern Hemisphere footy, which is a couple of bangs. If you're not moving, kick the ball, hope they make a mistake. But there was no crash and bash. It was all move from one side to the other, which is a huge contrast for the likes of me and Erasmus. They were very much let's speed up, pick and goes, runners off 9, runners off 10, and make the breaks through there. Whereas they were very much let's go side to side to side and kick side balls. I think that's where I got most of my fitness, because I came back slimmer and fitter than anything else. But it was extremely cold. The winters there very different to the Evans Bay field, where honestly there's still one memory in my mind there where the referee had to come like half an hour early to the game. It was called the key test, which I always laughed at. And essentially, it was a massive ice or snowstorm the night before. they showed up with a key, and if they could break the ice through with the key on the field, we were allowed to play. And if we didn't, the game got cancelled and we missed out. So we missed out on a couple of games just because of that, because it was so cold. But it was quite a different experience to play on such a frozen and solid ground.
So how good is your French now?
Oh, honestly, I got a couple of good mates there, and I can write it. But people that speak it to me, I'm sweet. But no, honestly, my French speaking wise is disgusting. It's quite poor. It is. It's as all people learn their first languages, the first thing they taught me were the swear words, as per usual. And those have always stuck in my head because they're the ones that always got shouted at me when I was doing something wrong. But I feel like my rugby words are all sweet. So it's a gauche and a droite, left and right, and pass and ballon. All the ball, the nice easy ones that they let the foreigners think about. But basic conversations. Yeah, don't expect me to have any kind of conversation in French, Brad. It won't go down very well at all.
And while you were there playing as well, did you study in France as well?
Yeah. So we were there on a student visa, and so we had to go to school about 10 hours a week. So it was only, it wasn't too bad. It was about 2 hours a day. It consisted of helping out the English teacher with English and pronunciations with the students there. Also had had to go to French classes, which were way above our head. The French teacher there wasn't very keen on having people that didn't speak French there, so we very much got shoved into the corner, and we just pretty much just played, sort of tic-tac-toe and noughts and crosses in the background. And then it was sort of PE. But then the club were really nice to us, and they gave us an extra 2 hours of tutoring before training days, which is sort of where we learned most of it. Me, Arizman, and a couple of the other senior Marist St Pat's boys got actually a proper chance because everyone, although really wanted to learn to speak English, they didn't really have the patience for how slow we were in French to try and have conversations.
You returned to St Pat's in the middle of 2012 to finish your studies and play rugby. How difficult was that, coming back to study in New Zealand after being in France?
I was quite lucky. I'm a little bit of a nerd in the sense that I always had the goal that I wanted to be a doc. And so I'd gotten mum and dad to organise some correspondence learning over there. So I was never really going to go behind with my sciences. Luckily enough, they actually let me come back. And maybe it was just because I was a little bit of a younger student, and because I was 17 when I went over. So it was that young, early children. Because I'd already passed my maths and my English, I only had to be there for my science. And the teachers got sick of me enough because I'd already done the correspondence. And as you well as attest to, probably in the staff room, they ended up just shifting me off to the library. The library was my friend for that second half of the year, where I'd go, I'd do my homework. Miss Salval, Mrs. McDonald, and Mr. Neil were my 8th form teachers. And they essentially just said, hey, look, we'll give you we've already covered everything because you'd already been here for all of this. You've been studying it. We'll just give you your homework. Come to the scholarship classes. That'll be just a little bit extra. But please don't come in, or we're just going to have to send you out of the room, and you'll bother the rest of your kids, your students. Yep. So it was either going out to the basketball court, the gym. Mr. Lidstone gave me the gym keen. I got to go to the gym by myself, or the library just to go and sleep in the beanbags.
Yes, they were very popular. Yes,
they're very nice beanbags.
And also that you had a close loss to Silverstream, and also a semi-final in the mud at Wellington College. Tell us about those two close losses.
Oh, close loss to Silverstream. So that was, I believe, that was a televised one, wasn't it? So that was our first sort of proper game back for Arizman and I. The boys were very welcoming in terms of us, so we sort of slotted right back in. The game plan hadn't really changed because it was the same coaching team. We were doing absolutely great. I still thoroughly remember that one all the way through. And then, unfortunately, as per Saucy's thing, has our sort of main hitman when he came and repeated as well to try and make secondary schools. He snapped his forearm for the second time that year. Halfway through the first half, the first 20 minutes, I believe. And unfortunately, we got up quite a bit, and then we sort of were just playing catch up again. And unfortunately, Silverstream, we just had a really good kicking game. I remember it was Chase Tietia and Josh Robertson-Wepu were the two main boys who ended up, not many sort of 16, 17-year-olds could kick 50 metres. And the fact they can consistently do that and plug us back. Luckily, there was no 50-22s back then because they just were able to turn us around. And it seemed, if I remember rightly, we just seemed to play most of the game in our half because of just the way they turned us around. Now, the semi-final, I do remember that one fondly, and that was because, we did lose. That's all right, but we got to play against, it was quite fun. I had James Fionati, who's now my captain. He was playing centre at the time. Now, thankfully, his muscles grew out and they put him in the proper position down on flanker. But he was my sort of enforcer in the game. And it was quite good because they had the likes of Nelson, Asafo Solomona. All these big names that can see playing against that are all making their big ways now. But he was their sort of main ball runner man, and everyone fed off him. He was still, I think he was only sixth form or fifth form at the time. And he just absolutely tore everyone apart, even at the age of 14, 15. He gutted to not win, but I think all the boys at the end of it were sort of like, it's the mud pit, and it's quite hard to beat Wellington College at Wellington College. So it was just one of those days.
The Donaldson family, a strong history of talent and sport. Tell us about family.
About family. Well, also, we'll start with mum and dad. So mum and dad are huge sports people. Mum sort of represented most of, it was quite highly in gymnastics, sort of all across New Zealand and doing quite a lot of nationals and taking medals on that. And at the same time, Dad was quite a strong, very, very good rugby player. So I've heard. Everyone keeps telling me. And he was good enough to make the New Zealand secondary schools back in his day, but his dad was not a very sporty person, we'll say. He was very strong into the band. And so the selectors had called Dad and said, we wanted to play for the secondary schools. And he said, no, sorry, can't make it. He's got a band recital. And so Dad sort of got lynched from there, from New Zealand rugby. There went his career playing days. But he moved down he went to Ireland, had a good couple of seasons, came back. I think he ended up playing about 130 odd games for Marist St Pat's Prems. He still lets me know every single time for whoever goes into that the green room at Marist St Pat's. Only 4 or 5 people are on every single plaque up there for the most meritorious player, outstanding in 100 games. And every single time we go there together, he goes, "Hey, Luke, my names are up there. Where are yours?" So yeah, thank you very much. Every single time. We laugh about it now, but I was like, yeah, it was a good goal to have. I got 2 little brothers, Zach and Sam. Zach was another sort of star in his own right. He was cricket and rugby. He was lucky enough. He was just that pure natural talent, where he was sort of captain of the first 11 cricket team, and was making the Wellington reps through that, and was also playing the first 15 from the age of from 5th form as well. He at the end of college got sort of a dual offer. Really, it was rather much we go up to Hawke's Bay and either play for Central Districts or try and crack the Magpies. I think he took I'm sure he has no regrets now. He took the more hustle and bustle life of picking rugby, of which he absolutely loved. He quickly found his way into the premier team up there at Napier Marist. I don't think we're allowed to go to any other Marist clubs. Dad would disown us. He's reminded us time and time again. So, we went up there and played for Napier Marist, which was Dad's old club before he came down. Got his blazer up there. He was always part of the Magpies, and then finally got his crack, I believe 3 years ago. He got a couple of stints off the bench, but then the likes of sort of Falau Whakatava started coming through, those Hawke's Bay bred boys, and he sort of got put a little bit on the back burner. So currently he is now living over in France with his partner. Hopefully he'll make it back to my wedding. We're still waiting on his confirmation, which, I'm still holding him to it. He's going to be my best man, so he better be there. And Sam's my other younger brother, and he was the same age as Keelan Whitman, so he's 6 years younger than I, and he was an absolute rugby whiz. The kind of player that would always run hard, tackle hard, didn't really care about his body. And much to his detriment, he took a lot of concussions as a result, and got quite a lot of symptoms up into seventh form, where it was sort of him and Keelan doing the captaincy runs. And after that, I think he had his final concussion against Silverstream at the end of the season, and he was out for about 6 months and decided to hang up the boots. Now he didn't give up rugby. He went down to Dunners, studied a sports medicine degree. So thankfully he's graduating next week. So we're all down to Dunedin to go see graduation. And it was a sports medicine, sports coaching, and he's now currently doing the under 65s with Devon Oliver Bell, Andre Bell's son. I think they're all trying to keep that lineage going.
Oh, very good. Now, you mentioned about head injuries, as well as being an ED doctor. You're one of a few doctors that you don't get to see on TV, but you're there in the background doing the head injury assessments. Now, not many people on TV know what happens in the background with head injury assessments. Tell us what actually goes on.
Cool. So Wellington Stadium is slightly different to the rest of them, but essentially what we have is two doctors and a nurse, one on each side of the field. We sort of attribute a bit to like the video TMO referees. We have to look at every single contact and every single person or player that stays down, especially afterwards, or any concerns for us. We have to go through the video. We assess whether or not we're not assessing the concussion itself. We assess whether or not there's a possibility you've got it as our testing. And so what we end up doing, if we recognise any concerns at all, we had to do that for the last Hurricanes game that was there for Caleb Delaney and James Blackwell, with sort of the most two recent ones. And essentially, if there's any concern, but it's ambiguous, we talk to the doc for the team doc. We say these are our concerns, or if it's clear cut, we say no, come off the field. They come into our medical room. Essentially, go through a good 12-minute concussion test, which essentially goes through testing majority of the hemispheres of your brain, looking at your immediate recount of words, whether you can take in and regurgitate information straight away, whether your concentration is there. So what we do there is you're actually having to repeat numbers backwards in various numbers, so sort of 3, 2, 1, or in 4s, 5s, and 6s, seeing how well you go on that. We then go into a bit of balance. We get your boots off, get you standing on a couple of one leg with your eyes closed, and see whether you turn over. So it's your joke about PE. We then have a look at sort of the symptoms, whether or not they actually remember where they are, who scored last, who they play last, who won that game. And then we finally assess them again and see whether or not they recalled those words that we repeated to them at the start. They get all assessed at the start of a season. And so they get their baselines done there. And if there's any deficits or any changes compared to their baseline, we go, no, sorry, like we are not happy for you to go on, essentially. There's the chance that you've got a concussion and you need to, and they sort of get parked. And we do another concussion test after the game once all the adrenaline and everything's come back, and then hand them back to the docs. Sadly, unlike like most people that see on the TV, they don't get that sort of they don't know what happens there and the reason why we do these things. And so there's always been a bit of flack, especially in the last couple of years, about the concussion tests and why we're taking people off. So hopefully I've shed a little bit of light on that. But essentially, I'm there because a lot of the players and the people through the especially the TVs don't really think about the long term problems of concussions, and that's our sort of, especially now with this massive lawsuit going over in the UK. We're just trying to make sure that we're actually looking after all the players, a little bit more player welfare. Yeah, people are going, it's a bit more pansy rugby, but you see the boys, and I see it a little bit through Sam, my little brother, as I mentioned before, with all his concussions, and it's just every now and again you can sort of see those concussion symptoms come through, especially when it's when he's a bit more stressed, or he's had just like the smallest of head knocks come straight back through, and it goes back to first base thrilling. You're not really, you're having to fight back to get back to it. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light as to why we do and why.
Well, Zach, do you actually have the final say, or is it the team doctors, or is it consultant.
No, so we get the final say.
Yep.
So no, we definitely get final say. We're there as the independent. The reason for that is so that there's no bias for any of it, because obviously if it's quite a high intensity or an important game, then sometimes and not always, and I'm sure it's not the case for most of the doctors I've worked with, but we're removing any kind of bias.
Yep.
And so if we are concerned enough, but the doc goes, no, I think we're okay. That this all happens before we actually end up doing the official testing anyway. And so, as we said, we bring the doc over and we get to look at the footage with them, and they go, no, we think we're okay. We override them and go, no, this person needs to have a test, because technically that's our role and that's our license on the line. So it's better to be cautious for us. The only reason I say those is that there was a very tentative game. It was the All Blacks Ireland game last year, the one that had all the sidelines, and it was the Irish. I don't know if it was the physio or if it was just a person that was supposed to be in there, but it was very much, no, he's fine, let's get going. No, he's absolutely fine to play. Like, this is normal. He doesn't speak proper English, and it was all very hustle bustle. And then he ended up going back on for whatever reason. I'm sure he made the pass, or maybe there's miscommunication. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But then it turned out to be that he ended up having a concussion, clear concussion, afterwards, and it all came back on us. And that was sort of the issue, is that we're there to provide a service, even though half the people don't appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm sure the players will in 10, 20, 30 years. But that's our job for the safety of everybody else.
And of course, you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, but you had a pretty special off-season in Samoa. Is that correct?
I did. I'm lucky enough. So I've been lucky enough to be engaged for about 4 years now, with my beautiful fiancée Renadia, who is of Samoan heritage. So I try every year to get back over to Samoa, and then in between COVID, it's been a bit difficult. So it was my first year back in the summer holidays, which is quite nice. And luckily enough, I've got a lot of Nadia's family are very huge rugby nuts and love playing. And so I've pretty much tied straight into touch season over there at that time. Got myself into a couple of tournaments because I was playing touch over here and wanted to keep fit, and got straight into it. They pretty much just said, bring your boots and go for it.
Battle of the Catholics this Saturday. MSP taking on Huddy Boys Marist for the Father Cleary Shield. Hutt only got their second win last weekend. Last year's game, you probably don't want to remember it. It was 50 points to 14. How do you expect? Yeah. What do you expect for them this weekend? And are you playing?
First of all, I have absolutely no idea if we're playing. So our team gets named on Thursday, and we have chats with the coaches. So I'll put my hand up. I've been there on Tuesday, and so all I can do now is say, look, I've showed up to training. If you want to pick me, pick me. But Huddy Boys obviously had a hard start to the season. They obviously didn't get quite a lot of wins, but we've done a lot of video footage of theirs, and it seems like all their connections are starting to come in. They have a lot of class players there, and it just seems like everyone's starting to get now an understanding of how they all play. So they played absolutely mean last week, and obviously got the win that they deserved. And so they're coming off a really big high. And obviously we're going to be up for the challenge. We got goals that we started the year. First one was that we don't lose at home. Obviously we scraped away the last game at Javal, but still kept it alive. And so that's always going to be our first one. And the second one was that we always wanted to try and win all the trophies. Now we didn't win the one versus OBU, and that's all right. That's maybe one little blip, but we're going to try and get ourselves back on the train against Huddy Boys at home on Saturday, definitely.
Luke, it's been fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui this evening. All the best this weekend, and keep going well with your job as a doctor.
Thank you very much, Brad. Thank you for having me. Have an awesome night.
You too. That is Luke Donaldson, halfback for Marist St Pat's, and hope you got a good insight into what they do behind the scenes at the stadium, particularly with head injury assessments. I can tell you it's a pretty intense job, what they have to do looking on the sidelines and also in the medical room, making sure the welfare of the players is kept in good shape in particular. Well, it's round 7 of the Swindale Shield this weekend, and some big, massive games coming up as the top 8 is sort of looking anyone at the moment, really, probably except for the bottom 3 teams. But the top 4, it keeps changing. And let's have a look at the games this weekend. Marist St Pat's have Hutt, as mentioned before. That's 7 versus 9. Porniki versus Avalon. Old Boys University versus Wainui. Jayville versus Parramatta Plimpton. That will be an excellent one there. Jayville winning against OBU last week. Oris versus Tawa. Upper Hutt versus Petone. That's the game we're covering this weekend on the road. We're taking it on the road this weekend. So 2:45. And Wellington versus Norths. So that will be an interesting one there. 14 versus 13. Also, this Saturday, we're going to be covering a first 15 traditional. It's at midday. Silverstream taking on Palmerston North Boys High School. So that's we're grateful to be working with St Pat Silverstream and their rugby program this year as well. So 2 games on Huddy Sports YouTube this weekend. We look forward to having you watching both games. And next week's Huddy Hui, episode 81, Wednesday, 7 o'clock, as time as always. And that is the Huddy Hui for tonight. We thought we'll, except for the technical errors at the start, we'll finish off with the audio of an impressive 4 tries. Stanley Solomon against Tawa last Saturday. Ciao for now.
In with the ball, out to Riley Higgins, passes out to Lassie Filippo, cuts around 2, looks for the offload, and he's been brought down 10 away from Tawa's try line. Southern end, Larkai takes the ball into contact. Henry out to Filippo again. Henry finds TJ Clark, out to Stanley Solomon, looks, goes and scores for Petone. Stanley Solomon, this is only his 4th try in the colours for Petone. Intercepted by Stanley Solomon. Lua tries to chase after him. Lost the polo, but Stanley Solomon has got to sail under the post. He's got to score his 2nd try for the match. And the score now is 25 points to 10. And that was great vision there from the young man. Certainly backline, Khan Green. Out to Malolo. Comes out to Lossie Filippo. He's got Stanley Solomon again. Can he go and score a hat-trick? He's got 3 tries. Stanley Solomon has got 3 tries. Fantastic vision by Lossie Filippo. In his 36th game for Petone, and he saw the young speedster to his right-hand side, and with plenty of pace, Stanley Solomon goes over and scored his 3rd try for the Villagers.
That was masterclass, Brad. Some fantastic play from the base of the scrum. Once again, we've been mentioning that pass, the mucker from Logan Henry.
Ball's been turned over. Here goes Stanley Solomon again. He's read. That could be 4 tries. They're chasing back after him. He's got to get 4 tries. This is magic here at Lyndhurst Park. He followed up the kick. He managed to bounce off 2 tacklers. And Stanley Solomon, write yourself into the history books. That's 4 tries. Lee Campbell, stunning.
Outstanding play, Brad. Outstanding.